Investing in digital health and MedTech. The winners, losers, and anyone else in between so far.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the panel, Investing in Digital Health and MedTech, Winners, Losers, and In-Betweeners. When the previous moderator said it was the best panel of the afternoon, he forgot one word. Best panel of the afternoon until that time. Yeah? There you go. Welcome to this. I've got a great set of panelists which should allow for really engaging and rich conversation. We've got 25 minutes, and I'd like to take questions from the audience as well. So let's get cracking. I'd like to start with panelists introducing themselves, their current position, background, and anything relevant you want to share. Oshin, you want to start?
Is it on? Yeah, okay. My name is Oshin. I'm currently working as a venture manager for Creative Destruction Lab in Berlin. My background is that of a clinician scientist, and I've been helping startups with improving their products, making them more patient-centric for the past 4 years through my own company. And I also serve as a fractional CMO for some companies in Canada and in India and in the APAC region in general, just to make sure that the strategy that they're building is as patient-centric as possible, and I do most of my work in digital health. Yeah.
Thanks, Oshin. Martyn?
Yeah, hi. So I'm a general partner and head of Europe for the Global Health Impact Fund. We're a clinician-led fund. 95% of our investors are clinicians. We invest globally. We focus on basically medtech and digital health. But yeah, my background is wealth management, but all my partners are clinicians.
Thanks, Martyn.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anamaria. I'm based in Geneva in Switzerland. I represent Unorthodox Ventures. We are a family office out of Austin, Texas, and we invest purely in medtech. Our ticket sizes are usually 1 to 10 million, and we're looking for seed to Series A medtech companies. So if you are a medtech company, please reach out to me. And my background is United Nations, so I come from the tech side of the UN, as well as in the Swiss government, where I invested there for the canton of Geneva, mainly in Swiss startups.
Excellent, thank you. And a bit about myself and why I get to ask these great set of people some questions. I've been building, scaling, and investing in digital businesses for over 25 years. I've done it as an executive entrepreneur and a private equity investor. Currently, I'm the co-founder and CEO of HealthHero, which is a digital telehealth company, pan-European, the largest primary care operator in Europe, covering 4 countries, 30 million patients, and 5 million consultations a year. Okay, let's get started. The last 3 years, actually, has seen an amazing up and down, boom and bust in investing in this sector, right? Which are the companies or themes you think has emerged as winners in the last 3 years? Anamaria?
Well, I will give some background maybe from the Swiss ecosystem as well as the European one, but in Switzerland we saw recently in the past years a lot of XR-related companies actually in the healthcare. So a lot of companies basically that are using VR for training. It became very, very popular for surgeons to use this to train their residents and so on. And that was very much not welcomed, I would say, in the beginning. It was a little bit like, what is this? And then this is usually gaming and so on. But actually, it became very, very popular now. And we see in a lot of Swiss hospitals that are really kind of embracing this kind of technologies. And the second one, I would say very much, and in Switzerland, there is a very interesting company called Orama VR, which does this very heavily and very well known. And the second second thing I would say, anything to do with like removing the patient out of the hospital as soon as possible and continuing the monitoring at home. So this kind of at-home wards, I think they're called. And there's a very interesting company in the UK called Dokla that does that. And I think they raised also a lot of money. And it's something quite new that they give you a kit and you're doing that. So I would say these two kind of stood out for us.
Absolutely. And they're early stages or are they scaled up? Do you think this particular thing is a start of a journey or is it, has it got traction?
I would say the patient at home, I think, has got a lot of traction. I see a lot of deal flow on this. The XR kind of VR one, it really depends where you're based because some governments are a little bit more conservative and they might not be thinking of this immediately, also hospitals, etc. But it really depends. In Switzerland, it's getting a lot of traction, but it really depends, I think, on the countries.
You know, Switzerland as a country has been quite innovative. Even in telemedicine, the local player, they scale fast, actually. Martyn?
Yeah, for me, like I think the big one is telemedicine, like you just said, like, you know, especially with COVID. You know, but then again, like there's been a lot of losers from the telehealth space because there was so many to choose from. But for me, you know, outside the medical device space, the area I really love is more like the wellness, like because we have a network of clinicians and a lot of them leave basically their roles because of burnout. Like there's a really good company out the Czech called Attune Health where it monitors the stress levels of anyone who uses the application. It's just, you put it to your phone, face, 60 seconds, it gives you all the vital health signs. So I think what they're doing is pretty awesome stuff. Outside that, you know, again, similar to what she said, like the AI thing's a big one, especially with the surgeons. But yeah, for me, I think the telehealth's been the biggest in the past 3 years.
Absolutely, and telehealth has evolved from just being a Zoom for medical consultations to things like this. I remember a company called Caduci, which does the same thing. You're talking to the doctor, and doctor can see your stress levels and heartbeat and stuff. So far richer consultations. Yes. Oshin?
So at Creative Destruction Lab, we usually deal with quite early stage deep tech companies. So something that we've been seeing a lot of is digital biomarkers other than the patient giving in the information themselves. So for example, voice biomarkers for something like ADHD or voice biomarkers for something like mental health disorders. So these are the areas that are quite on the cutting edge right now, but they are seeing investments in them because especially with something like voice biomarkers, the ability to conduct the trials to prove the efficacy is not very difficult. So they are actually able to do it, and that's why the investors have faith in that kind of a technology. Apart from this, I feel like in general, non-clinical workflows like reimbursement has been quite on the uprise, especially in the US. For example, with Collectly, they've seen a huge investment. Also with Aledade, they were actually the biggest investment with about, I think, 260 million back in June. So these are the kind of trends that we've been seeing, but I would say that the non-clinical workflow is quite well accepted as a good investment, whereas the digital biomarkers are still an emerging area.
Excellent, thank you. On the voice biomarkers, about 2-3 years back, I heard that Google has been hearing the conversations happening on Android and developing a lot of that technology. Still, there are deep tech companies doing the same, getting funded. Because the questions investors ask, what if Google gets into this space, and it has gotten into that space?
I think the question is about specialization. So for example, there's a company called Peak Profiling. They were a part of our cohort last year, and they are mainly focusing on mental health disorders. So they are doing one thing, and they are doing it right. Whereas with something like Google, because it's such a mass product, it's much harder to specialize, and especially with something like voice biomarkers, you need to conduct dedicated trials for that specific disorder. So that would be quite difficult for a mass company to do.
Understood, understood. So the winning themes are things that help hospitals. Clearly the cost is there. The mainstream adoption, telehealth, which is the first kind of end consumer adopted at a scale, I agree. And some deep tech stuff there. Good. Let's flip it around. I'm trying to stick true to the topic, yes? Who are the losers? In the last 3 years again, with all the easy money available and stuff, there were some business models, there were some companies which just did not pass the test of time. Oshin, you want to start on this?
I mean, do I even need to start with Babylon and peer therapeutics? Because those are the obvious ones, right? So I'm not actually going to talk about them. I think that the insight that I can provide from like how hands-on we are with our ventures is, for example, startups at the early stage who rely on pharma partnerships for their product validation, who are unable to get investments in without any sort of validation, so they rely on the pharma partnerships, and then they are not able to achieve them. So actually for 3 ventures in our cohort, that's exactly what happened, and they basically failed. So I feel like the absolute reliance of an early stage startup on only one distribution channel or one validation channel is a short way of failure. Yeah.
Totally agree. Martyn?
Yeah, it's hard to say really who's the failures outside the big ones. Like, there were so many companies that were funded, but like for me, like I invest in Europe and the US. For me, the biggest losers are the US because the valuations were so much higher compared to Europe. Like I look at the startups in Switzerland, Hungary, London, Ireland. You know, they've come a lot further in the past few years than those in the US. Like we have a company in our portfolio. You know, we were planning to write it off, and then, you know, it did a 9-figure being acquired. So that was a big success for us. You know, it's just hard to say because with COVID, there were so many winners, and then everyone going back to work. You know, a lot of these companies, you know, especially like the telehealth platforms, they're dead now because people want the face-to-face interaction with the clinicians.
Right, okay. Anamaria?
Maybe for me, what I find very interesting about this domain is that in the end of the day, the loser is the patient, because there are so many good companies out there that don't get funded sometimes because the market is so small. So sometimes it's a pity we don't invest because we say we were looking for these billion-dollar markets, million people markets, and there are a lot of issues out there that very many good companies are actually solving for people and to save their lives and to change their lives and to better them. And in the end of the day, I find this a pity. So I would say that's kind of for me the losers, in addition to, of course, what was said.
That is an important philosophical point. You see many innovations which are in that narrow area doing amazing thing, could have great impact on the patient, but not an investment case per se. So building on that, what I see in my experience is there are lots of companies who, let's say 5 PhDs working over 5 years, have developed deep clinical IP, but have focused zero on commercialization. And this is like the 101 of building a business, that they don't think about reimbursement. They don't think about who is going to pay for it. They're just very driven by the science of it. And I've seen many such companies fail in this. Okay, so moving on, given all of this, how has your investment approach changed, if there has been any change? Maria, you want to start?
For us, our investment approach, unfortunately, this is a family office, right? So we're looking to make that big exit or those many big exits. So we are always very hardcore on the clinical trials, on the reimbursements, and of course on the approvals. So that will stay, I think, no matter what. Winners or losers, sometimes we might pass on companies that actually did very well, and we did that in the past, mistakes. But that's never changed because we always look at those three things and how are you saving money for the hospitals, how are you saving money for whoever you are selling this to, and how are you making everything more efficient. Our investment thesis and strategy stands the same, really looking at these 3 points, and it doesn't really change. We try not to go just with the trends, because sometimes you get lost. Like you mentioned during COVID, everybody was like, oh, mental health, let's just all put money in mental health. We try to really stick to that and see if that's gonna keep us alive.
Can I follow up on that? Do family offices approach investment in this sector differently to VCs and other private equity companies?
I think so, yes, absolutely. In the sense that family offices, depending if you're a single family office or a multi-family office, depending if you are an entrepreneur or if you inherited. So it really depends where your focuses are. But in our family office, the founder is a former entrepreneur, and his basically ideas are very much into what he wants to personally, his personal philosophy. He wants to invest in hardware and he wants to do good. So hardware and good comes to MedTech. So that's not, that's totally something that he's passionate about today. Maybe in a couple of years that will change. So that's very different from a VC, which is really looking at and also reporting to a lot of people. In the end of the day, that's his personal money, in this case, in our family office. And if he loses that money, it's his decision and he doesn't have to report to anyone. So that's why sometimes it's also easier to approach maybe because he might really love a founder and he's going to follow that founder, he or she, until the end. Or sometimes you might have an amazing company that you present and he just doesn't like that area because he thinks it's not good. So.
Understood. So Martyn, on the first part, has your investment approach changed given what's happened in the market?
It hasn't, no. Because with us being clinicians, we have a network of over 2,000 clinicians behind us. So we're very, very specialized in the areas that we do invest in. So our thesis hasn't changed, but we are very strict on our due diligence. It's most probably one of the strictest ones because we're not a generalist venture firm. We specialize in the medtech. So we are very strict of who we do invest in.
And one of the things you had mentioned that you also do investments in the US as well as Europe. So you want to cover the differences in the markets and an approach in different markets?
Yeah, so for us, the US is a lot easier because it's one language. It's basically the English language. We're outside of Arizona where you might need the Spanish language. You come to Europe, it's harder to scale a company in Europe, especially if there's a language behind it because English is not the #1 language in out the whole of Europe. Germany's Germany, Swiss is Swiss. Is why the US, it's the US. Well, no, our investment thesis is because we do have the networks behind us and we are building up partnerships in Dubai and India and around the world. If we invest in the startup, they have access to every single investor, every single hospital that we're partnered with, every single clinic we're partnered with. So, yeah, it makes no difference for us.
Okay. Oshin, as a clinician and a venture builder, are there any themes which defines the winning teams versus the not so winning teams in your experience?
Yeah, and I don't think that really changes over time. So I think that some of the teams where we very clearly say no are the teams where the clinical person or the scientific person is only a small contributor and is not actually contributing to the decision making in any significant way. So that's quite an important criteria for us where we need that clinical knowledge on the team rather than as an advisor. The second thing is the resilience, because I feel especially when you're building in the digital health space, there's just so many regulatory hurdles, there's validation hurdles, everything, right? So you need to be very resilient. And the third thing is the action bias, which is quite necessary. You can't keep on planning things because even though we say that, the whole fail fast philosophy doesn't apply to medicine, but at the same time, you need to keep building the things and executing them, rather than just planning long term and trying to think that this is the time when we'll build that. Like, you need to actually start building from scratch and keep progressing. So that's quite, like, the trio is quite important to us.
Great, thank you. Let's open the floor to the audience. If there are any questions anyone has, we can take one or maximum two. Okay, while you think about it, and please raise your hands. I'm going to ask one question. Which technology do you think are at the cusp in this area, sector of course, of mass adoption, the new technologies?
Mass adoption in this area, I would definitely go with telemedicine. Okay. I mean, it's not maybe new technology, but it's new as in the advancements of machine learning, AI, data collection, data sharing from the hospital, etc., etc. For example, in Switzerland, there is a new company that basically you have a profile there, and everything from every doctor that you've ever gone to is in that profile. So now when you go to a new doctor, you don't have to remember the issues you had. You don't have to bring the x-rays from the past and so on. So you make those meetings online, and then you move on. And even we have an insurance service that the first thing you do is telemedicine, and then you can go to the doctor. So it sounds kind of like, yeah, it's obvious and it's out there, but I think it still has a way to go, and especially in emerging markets, I think that's going to be, something very much to look for.
Totally agree. Excellent. There is a question. There you go.
Hello, great conversation, thank you. I'm Ollie Smith. I'm an independent consultant advising companies on strategy, innovation, and applied ethics. And a lot of companies often come to me and they say, which is the best market to enter? And I have an answer, but I'm not going to say that because I want to hear what your answer is. By market, I mean country.
Well, it depends on the company. Like, the US is always the best market as a VC because it's the biggest market in the world. But because, again, it's just on the startup. Your device might be better off in Africa. It might be better off in Asia. Like, it's hard to say where the best market is. Like, everyone wants to go to the US because it's the biggest market. It's definitely the biggest market for the VCs. But, you can't put your finger on it. Like, I see so many fantastic companies in Switzerland that are amazing in Switzerland, but you put them to the US, it's just nothing.
If you want to add?
No, I would say something different. Nigeria, probably. Same population. It can be like the best player there. Who knows?
Brilliant. Okay, so look, we have 1 minute left, so thereabouts. Let's have some fun. I'm going to ask some questions, rapid fire, and I'd ask the panelists to drop your mic and just show thumbs up or thumbs down about certain technologies, okay? Ready? Excellent. Remote monitoring and Internet of Things. Great. Virtual wards and digital command centers. All right. Chatbots, virtual care assistants. No? All right. Large language models and AI. Great. Virtual reality and surgical innovation. Great. Digital therapeutics. Okay. Home testing. All right. Middle. MedTech funding environment as a whole. All right. On that positive note, thank you guys. Thanks for coming over. Amazing. Give it a round of applause.